Everyone's talking about this rumored DJI L-mount camera, a proper photography hybrid video style camera. Of course, this is no information yet. It's still to be revealed. It's all just rumors and speculations. DJI did join the L-mount alliance a little bit ago. So there's definitely potential here. I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I think this will happen probably sometime this year. And I think it's exciting for a lot of reasons because obviously just more L-mount cameras means more lenses potentially, especially if DJI gets into that whole business and we get some more L-mount lenses. That's awesome because it just helps the whole platform out, and in addition to Sigma and Lumix, etc. And it's also interesting because DJI is such a well-known, reputable company at this point in time. Of course, they made huge waves with the drone business, and that was such an amazing opportunity for real estate photographers, real estate videographers, and all sorts of filmmakers who over the years have embraced aerial style production. Of course, there's some licensing and pilot registration stuff you need to do alongside that if you're doing it commercially. But even on the consumer level, DJI makes awesome drones. They're what I always recommend when anyone asks, hey, what type of drone should I get? It's an easy recommendation because they do just work, and they work the best, at least from my experience. I've tried many different devices over the years and always use, those brands that give you something reliable, consistent, and good. And then there's the other ones who are just kind of trying to sell you a product. And once they get your money, they don't really support it. And the way it ends up working out is not all that great. So DJI has really built themselves up as this reputable company. I've had nothing but great experiences working with their support team as they've rolled out additional products like the DJI microphones, which now they have the Mic 2 and the Mic Mini. There are so many variations of products over the years from DJI, and I think for the most part, they've all held up, and they're all very interesting and popular for a few reasons. Because one, they're usually pretty good, but they also come at really attractive price points. And it seems like DJI is always doing stuff that's a little bit different, a little bit unique, pushing the envelope in terms of what's possible with these kind of, standardized products, whether it's drones or microphones or even cameras. They announced a while back and released the DJI Ronin 4D. And gosh, now this is just making me think of their whole gimbal side of the equation. Obviously, that was a huge thing for DJI, the gimbals and stabilization and all of that, leading into the DJI Ronin 4D. And I really try and say DJI because so many people say DJI. I think it rolls off the tongue a little bit better, but the brand is DJI. So I try and say that as much as I can. God knows there's so many videos out there where people are just saying DJI, 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 DJI. It's not DJI, it's DJI. Anyway, the DJI Ronin 4D, kind of weird, kind of strange. I haven't actually seen any of them out in the wild when I'm doing production, and you run across other filmmakers or cinematographers or videographers, whatever it might be. I really haven't seen any out there. They've been around for quite a while. It's kind of a unique, novel concept of building the gimbal into the camera. And that in itself is kind of niche. And I don't know how many they sold or how popular it actually was. They released new variations of the Ronin 4D with the Ronin 4D 6K, and then there's even an 8K version. However, these cameras are quite expensive and very niche. I don't know that many people that really want the gimbal built into the camera all the time. If you're always doing gimbal work, that's probably a valuable proposition. But for me, I like the standard compact handheld photography camera. And let's not forget DJI also owns Hasselblad, which makes medium format handheld photography cameras. And so I think there's a lot of potential here for what they end up doing if it is a L-mount style camera, a proper camera, not with a gimbal built in, not a consumer grade, Osmo Pocket 3, which I do have one. And I really like that camera. But it's more of an action camera, even though it's not quite as durable or rugged as some of the action cameras, which DJI also makes an action camera. So there's so many different products across the DJI lineup. And all of them, I think, are pretty good. I mean, let me know if you've had a bad experience. But for the most part, these are standard, reliable, decent products that compete alongside anything else that's popular in the filmmaking or photography world. So there's a lot of opportunity here for them to release something that competes with the Sony Alpha cameras or the Canon R cameras or the Nikon Z cameras or the Lumix S cameras or the G cameras. There's plenty of photographer style companies out there making great hybrids, and yet DJI has taken a long time to even get close to entering that market. It's been consumer level or I don't know how high end the Ronin 4D is. I think the 8K version is around $12,000. So it's not the highest of the high end like an ARRI or even a Red camera, but it's certainly out of reach for, your kind of prosumer entry level amateur style videographers or just someone who's a content creator. They're not really probably going to pick up a Ronin 4D. At least I didn't pick up one, and I never thought of even considering really getting one because it just seemed a little big, a little bulky. Although it does come with the benefits of the built-in gimbal, it never really made sense for me considering the price point. So a lower price point DJI L-mount camera that can take great photos, that can shoot great video. They have the track record to do it, to be the company that creates this kind of perfect hybrid. Now, I don't know if they'll actually deliver. Maybe they'll end up releasing more consumer level, a Pocket 4 or something like that, or an Action Cam 6, or just another variant of their drones. They have the Mavic, they got the Mavic Cine, they got the Mini, they got the Air. It's actually kind of hard keeping track of all their drones these days because that's what they're best known for. But even in their gimbal line, they still continue. I think they're on the Ronin, the RS4, I think is what they're on. They've obviously got some cool technology with their LiDAR focusing systems. Even that though, kind of niche, I've expressed my frustrations in the past of needing a gimbal in order to use LiDAR. Which seems like not the right way to go. There was an update for the GH6, the Lumix GH6, that if you used it with the Ronin RS3, I believe, with the LiDAR module, you could actually get, consistent, reliable, decent autofocus with the GH6. I never was able to test it myself. It was just too big of a price point and too big of a bullet to bite in terms of needing a gimbal, needing the LiDAR box attachment, to combine all that for the GH6 just to get autofocus. I'm glad I waited for the GH7, which just has phase detect built right in, which is the way I think we all kind of want it to work. I don't want to have to use a gimbal just to get autofocus. That's kind of silly. However, if DJI were to release this hybrid style photo camera and it had LiDAR built right into it, that is something that I would find quite interesting. I'd rather build in LiDAR instead of building in a gimbal. And I think the size, the form factor could be a lot more compact. And I think, it'd be a lot less expensive as well. I mean, gimbals are kind of complicated devices. There's a lot of extra components. There's a lot more things to break. And it ends up just being bigger, bulkier, and ultimately more expensive. If we can fit a LiDAR module in the camera itself, that's quite interesting, as well as what I think we all on this channel have been talking about recently, which is built-in NDs. If any company were to do it, I think it could be DJI. They have that weird kind of unique wow factor with all their products where they just throw in extra stuff that surprises you. Hey, this drone has an extra camera. It actually has 3 cameras or 3 different lenses. It's got all these different focal lengths. You thought you wanted just a drone that shot great video. Well, now you've got even more options flying in the sky. Those are the kind of fun things that I think DJI is capable of, and built-in NDs, electronic NDs, is probably the way to go. Not some kind of, filter or AI algorithm that lowers your exposure. No, like a proper electronic ND built right into the camera would make a lot of sense. And if it comes with the same caliber and reputation as Hasselblad as well, it doesn't necessarily have to be medium format. It doesn't have to be ultra high megapixel. But in terms of build quality, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of functionality, I think that would also be really nice to see as well. So if DJI does announce this camera this year, the other thing great about DJI announcements is that once they're announced, they're usually available either immediately or soon thereafter. So you don't usually have to wait that long. So once they do announce it, it'll be pretty interesting to see what actually gets delivered. They're part of the L-mount alliance, so I would expect it to be an L-mount style camera. And along with that, it would make sense to have a few unique L-mount lenses to go along with it. And maybe we do see the ultimate content creator hybrid style camera in 2025 from DJI. They're really good at catering to what I consider to be kind of the pop culture zeitgeist of products that you would actually want to buy both professionally and from a consumer level. DJI hits that sweet spot. They know what's good for both consumer level enthusiasts who just want to have something that's nice, that's reliable, that works. It's not a toy, it's a tool. And they sell tools to consumers, but they also make great tools for professionals, for filmmakers, for photographers. Well, I can't say for photographers yet, but maybe soon. And we'll see, are they able to bridge that gap? It seems like all these other companies either cater to the high end, the uber professionals, or they cater to the low end consumer, enthusiast, where it's more of they make gimmicky novelty style products. And I'm really sick of seeing those ends of the spectrum. I don't want something super expensive that's going to be outdated, because realistically, technology evolves so fast that the moment you buy a $10,000 camera, the one a year later that's $5,000 is twice as good. And I think that's the frustration that maybe goes unspoken a lot of the time. People want to spend money and, it doesn't matter because it's for your business and who really cares. But ultimately, it does matter if you're investing tens of thousands of dollars into equipment for it only to be outdated a year later, just because that's the speed of technology these days. That's quite frustrating and quite irritating. Oftentimes, it can be beneficial just to wait for the thing to come down to a more reasonable price point where you're actually making the money back before it's outdated. At least that's my mentality. But I want to buy a tool, not a toy. I don't want a cheap consumer grade drone. I don't want a silly, point and shoot camera that doesn't have the features I need. I want those true hybrids, the best of both worlds, the stuff that's professional but priced for a consumer. And I think that market is in high demand. There's plenty of people out there who want to be live streamers or YouTubers or influencers and content creators, let alone the people who also want to make it their profession and cater to clients and work for other people creating content. The content demands nowadays are never ending. There's always another place where a photo or video is needed. And so to have the right tool for the job is essential. It is important. It's why I've shot with Lumix for the last, at least 10 years, like over a decade, certainly, shooting with Lumix, because it's bridged that gap for me. Professional features in a more consumer-friendly price point, giving you the best of both worlds, giving you the best bang for your buck, giving you the most value out of it. But obviously, Lumix only makes a handful of devices, of products, of cameras. So I've had to go elsewhere for my other things like lights and microphones, etc. So DJI has been part of my kit for the longest time, although I don't talk about it as much because it's not my main camera. I'm not just doing drone work. I'm not just doing audio work and needing microphones. Like, my main camera being a Lumix is kind of the bread and butter. It's the main focal point. But surrounding that, I do use the DJI Mavic 3. I've been using that since it was first announced. The moment they announced the Mavic 3, I bought one and I've been flying it ever since, and it's awesome. Same thing with their DJI microphones. I was, dealing with different wireless microphone solutions, and the moment I saw the DJI mic, the first one, I was like, that's exactly what I need. A case that charges it. It's got this magnetic, option, and the build quality is great, and it has been awesome. And the moment I had an issue with it, sent it to support, got a new one back, no problem. Let's see, I have the Pocket 3, obviously, that I've mentioned. And I've also used, aperture lights, which has become the staple of the industry. Aperture, another kind of startup, their first few products were interesting and kind of unique, a cheaper price point, but the build quality wasn't the greatest at the very beginning. But over the years, Aperture have built themselves up to being a standard on pretty much any film set, any video shoot, even photo shoots now. You see Aperture lights just because they're so good. I mean, I would wager almost every single piece of video or piece of content that's shot, there's an Aperture light somewhere behind the scenes, whether it's the small tiny ones or they're bigger, more expensive ones. They're another company that I've found has really catered to this hybrid market where it's the professional tools, the professional features, but it's available at a variety of price points. So if you're someone just starting off as a YouTuber in your bedroom, you can afford some of their products, and they're good products. If you're a high-end cinematographer and you want to show up with a grip truck and load it out with LED lights, they have those as well. there's really something for everyone. Aperture has been very smart about that. DJI has been very smart about that. And I expect that that will continue to grow. Obviously, Aperture, they're kind of the lighting side of the equation. DJI has been more of the aerial side, the gimbal side, maybe more the action camera side, but they keep carving out these sweet spots where more and more people are picking up their products and really embracing the DJI ecosystem. And I can't say that it's really holistic. It's not like the drones really work necessarily with the microphones and the pocket cameras. Like they kind of are starting to get that cross-pollination with the microphones working with the action cameras. That's starting to happen. But maybe we'll see more of that if they do enter this photography hybrid style camera. The Ronin 4D was an interesting shot at something new and novel that really no one else had, but also that makes it kind of like quirky and oddball. I don't know how many people were asking for it either. And even now that it's out there, how many people are still using it? If you're using it, I'd be curious to know what your experience is like. There's a lot of people who've made videos about the Ronin 4D, but less people I think that I've seen, out and about actually using it as their preferred tool. I think it'd be really great to see DJI release something that was a photo video hybrid, had some interesting, maybe it's LiDAR, maybe it's NDs, maybe the sensor size is somewhat unique. Maybe they're doing something with lenses that's unique as well. They're a cool company, and I think they've really catered to what I consider to be the most popular part of the market in terms of just mass attention. When you have influencers and YouTubers and content creators excited about it, but it's still a useful tool for professionals as well. I think that is the sweet spot. And even people have their hobbies, they have their passions. Even if they're not a working professional, they could still just be a regular consumer who wants to buy a nice camera. And people have disposable income. They're willing to invest in things that are worth investing in. So we could see something very interesting, very unique. And I think DJI, if you're going to make something for the first time, you might as well, take it. Every other company, Sony, Canon, Nikon, Blackmagic, even now, Lumix, they all have such a legacy in this space that they're kind of stuck with a few things, in terms of what they support, their menu, their functionality, the firmware that goes into all these things. They've built it all out, and it's continued to grow and evolve over time. Look at Adobe Premiere and how much that has grown and evolved over time. But it still has this base foundation, this history. DJI doesn't have any of that when it comes to a photo camera, something that you would hold and take a picture with as well as shoot a video with. So the sky's the limit for what they want to do in terms of what it looks like, what it feels like, what's the menu like. If they do actually go down this road, I'm quite excited because of all the companies I can think of, they are the one that's perfectly poised to do it right from the beginning, to have something out the gate as your first version that would do quite well. I think. We'll see. Who knows? It's all just smoke and mirrors. It's all just guessing at this point in time. But where there's smoke, there's fire. And I think something is going to come down the road eventually. I would expect that to be this year. I can't imagine it being next year for as long as people have been talking about these rumors. So I'm excited to see what that actually might be. And if it is sooner rather than later, how big of a splash that makes. Is it dead on arrival? Or is it something completely new and exciting? And if it's DJI and I'm placing bets, I'd say it's probably going to be pretty new and pretty exciting. Even Sigma did the FP camera, and that was quite new and exciting at the time. I'd love to see a follow-up to that as well. I think they made a slight variation on it, the FPL maybe? I don't remember exactly what it was called. But something like that was really super pocketable for a full-frame camera. Obviously, that's not quite as unique anymore, but at the time, it really was. And I don't know how many they sold. Maybe we'll see if they ever do release a follow-up, if Sigma ever does. So I love the kind of new things from companies that seemingly have a pretty decent track record for making good decisions. There's plenty of other companies that have track records for making bad decisions, so I think we'd all be less excited about what they might have to offer. But DJI is one of those that I'm very optimistic about what they could do in this space if they do it right.